Okay, let's get started. So yesterday we discussed about a couple of those things on how to implement polymorphism. How to implement encapsulation in Java, and we also discussed what is polymorphism, right? If we go to the previous notes, we discussed how to implement inheritance in Java, and we discussed about a couple of examples, right? So today let's see how to implement how to write those in Java. Okay, so let me start up Eclipse. Do not start Eclipse. So we all know in Java, if you want to use inheritance, you need to use extends. Okay, and just to reiterate, a subclass extends a superclass, right? So this is what we have discussed today. Let's see that with an example. Just give me a second, my Eclipse is still firing up. Okay. Okay, so let me create a class called parent. So just for the sake of example, we'll create a class called parent to show inheritance. So we'll create a class called parent. Finish. Okay, so in that I'll create a public string, and I'll create something called parent attribute. Okay, and I will also create a method, public void, let's say print parent details. So it's a simple class which contains two methods, and in this I'll say system.out, and a simple class. Now I'll create a new class called child. Okay, so the intention is, we all know that a child should extend from a parent. So let me change this method. Okay, so I'll just make sure that. So let's say this is, instead of parent, I'll say this is a child. Okay, here instead of parent, we'll say print child details. Here I'll say child details, and here you will say child attribute. Okay, so this is a class that we have, and yesterday we have seen, in order to implement inheritance, you need to use something called extends. So here I have a child class. I'll use something called extends, and I'll say parent. Okay, so if you see, this is a child class is extending from the parent. So that means all the features of parent, when I say features, in Java, features are nothing but attributes and methods. So all these methods are inherited by the child class. Okay, so let's see that in an example. So I'll create a new class called inheritance sample. Okay, and here let me create a main method. Okay, so main method, let me create a parent object. So I'll say parent is equal to new parent object. Okay, let's try to set some parent dot parent attribute is equal to, let's say the parent name is Tom. Okay, now when I print this details, I'll say parent dot what is that, parent details. Okay, so when I run this program, you should see the parent details. Nothing fancy, right? Now let's try to create a child object. So child obj is equal to new child, right? Now here let's try to say child obj dot child attribute is equal to, let's say this guy's name is Harry. Okay, and child obj dot print child details. So this should print the child details. Now these are two different objects. So far we have not seen inheritance. Now as I said, when a subclass extends from a superclass, it inherits all the properties. So that means the child object should have access to the parent object. So if you see Eclipse, the moment I said dot, gives a small pop-up here. It shows you the list of attributes and methods that are available on this particular object. So if you see here, it is showing me that the child attribute is there, and it also shows me that parent attribute is there, right? Parent attribute is equal to, I'll say Harry's father. Okay, just like I can access the attribute, I should be able to access the methods as well. Print parent details, right? When I run this, if you can see, whatever I set on the parent attribute of the child object is what it is printing, right? So this is what is inheritance all about, where you are inheriting all the features of a superclass. A subclass is inheriting all the features of a superclass. Okay, any questions on this? And as I said, in Java it supports single inheritance. It does not support multiple inheritance. Like I cannot say extends parent, let's say comma employee. Cannot say that. Java will complain. It says invalid, syntax error. Okay, Java supports single inheritance. So a class can extend from only one other class. Okay, does everyone understand inheritance? Any question on this? Okay, so I have one question. Now I said a child can access parents' attributes. What about the other way? Can a parent access child attributes? Is that possible? Good. So the answer is no. A parent is not aware who all are extending that. A parent can be extended by multiple children, but the parent has no clue who all are inheriting from it. A child is the only person who knows which parent it is extending from, or a subclass is the only one who knows which is a superclass. A superclass has no clue on which subclasses or which classes are inheriting it. Okay, so and that's an interview question there. So okay, let's move on. So any questions on inheritance before we proceed to the next topic, which is polymorphism. Actually, before that, I think we should discuss overriding. Okay. Now, I said a child inherit or a subclass as inherited properties from a superclass, right? But in yesterday's example, and whatever examples that I took, I said each class will have additional features. Like for example, Corolla L has additional features of LE. S has additional features of LE. Okay. So does this mean these are the extra features? Right. So apart from whatever the parent had, the child contains some extra attributes, extra methods. So these are extra features, right? But there might be situations where you want to overwrite something, where you want to enhance the existing thing. Okay. So what I mean to is, what will happen if I copy paste the same method in my subclass? What will happen if I copy paste the same class here? So just for the sake of an example, I'll put 2 in the subclass and I'll put 1 in the superclass. Okay. I'll delete all the parent objects. So right now we have a child object. I'm creating a child object and I'm calling the print parent details method. This particular method is defined in the superclass, which is the parent, and I've declared the same method in the subclass as well. Okay. So when I call print parent details, which method will be invoked? Will it be number 1 or will it be number 2? So here I have put 1 and in the child I have put 2. So which particular method will be invoked? Okay, good. Yeah, some of you have got the answer right. So let's see. The answer is 2. Let's run this program. So if you see, the answer is 2. And if I go ahead and remove this method, now I'll get 1, right? So this concept of having the same method signature, having the method with the same signature, right? We all know what a method signature is. We discussed that. It constitutes of the name and the parameter types. So if you declare the same method in a subclass as that of the superclass, then the method in the subclass is invoked. Okay. So this is known as method overriding. Right. So if you see the word override, right? It's an English word which means to override something. Right? Is to write upon something. So this is known as method overriding. Right? You're overriding something. There's a method with the same signature in the superclass. In the subclass, you are declaring the same method, thereby overriding the superclass method. Okay. So this is known as method overriding. So what happens is when you run this program, the runtime executes line by line. So it creates an object, it assigns the data to that object, then it calls this method. So it tries to find out where is this method. So it first checks in the subclass. does the subclass have the method? So it finds this method and prints that. Then it executes the next line, assigns the data. Then here again you're trying to call a method. So that it does the same thing. It goes and checks if the method exists in the subclass. If the method exists, it calls the method. If the method does not exist in the subclass, then it goes to the parent, the superclass. And here it tries to check. If that method exists, then it calls that method. Okay. So this is known as method overriding. Okay. Now, who can tell me what is the difference between method overloading versus method overriding? So the question is, what is the difference between overloading and overriding? Vamsi, what is your question? Are you telling me that it is not possible, or is that a question there? Please unmute and speak. Okay, I would appreciate if you talk rather than chat. I still
it's my question is like, is it possible? I think I guess that it's not possible to override the same method in the same class, because both the methods will have the same signature, which the Java doesn't allow. Is it correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's, I mean, just I'm confirming it. That's it.
Yeah, so that's correct. Okay,
yeah.
so
just now I understood the difference between overloading and overriding, because overriding is like having the same method signature in a different class, but the overloading is having passing the parameters with different number of values into the method. I guess that's right, correct?
okay, you gave your answer. Let's hear from others also, then we'll see. Okay, good job.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone else who wants to speak? I'm really getting tired here. I want you guys to speak. If you can speak, that will be great.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's like overriding is a concept in inheritance, means like which we have the same signature, whereas overloading is the concept in the single class where we have the same method with different signatures.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So this is an interview question. Interview question, or if you attempt any certifications, you can expect this question there. Right. So the difference is overloading. Overload. So that means you have more than one in the same class, more than one method with the same name but different parameters, right? Different method signatures. So that is known as method overloading. And what is overriding? Overriding is, it comes into play when you are using inheritance, wherein a subclass has the same method signature as the superclass method, right? So people often get confused with these words, overload and override. When you suddenly ask overload versus override, they might get confused between these two. They kind of know the answer, but they get confused. So an easy way to remember is always read this word slowly. Overload. What is overload? That means it has more than once. Something is there in multiple quantities. Something is there in more than once. Overload. What is override? Override is to overwrite. Right, is to write upon something. So a subclass has overwritten a superclass method. So that is known as method overriding. Okay. Rachna, did you get that now? Okay. So this is a very important topic. So please make sure you understand that. Any questions, feel free to ask me now. Method overloading and method overriding. Just 1 second, guys. I have to take this call once. Okay, it's okay. Okay. Shall we proceed further? Okay. So the next topic is polymorphism. Okay. Who can explain what is polymorphism? We discussed this before. So who can explain what is polymorphism? Okay. So polymorphism is a concept of an object taking different forms, right? So the way to remember this is poly. Poly is multiple. The word poly means multiple. Morph is shape. So polymorphism is something that is taking multiple forms, right? Just like an actor who is playing multiple roles, right? End of the day is the same person. Based upon the situation is playing a different role, right? And other example that I gave was you are playing the role of a student right now. In the morning, if you're working, you're playing the role of an employee, right? So that is what is polymorphism all about. Okay. Now let's see in an example how is this possible. Okay. So here I said parent child is equal to new, so and so forth, right? Now what will happen if I say parent something like this? Okay, let me just take this out. I'll comment this for now. Now if you see, let me just delete this. Will this work? Let me do one thing. Let me just say child, okay? Okay. And here I'll say so will this program work? You don't want to guess? So Siddhartha, how many objects am I creating here?
Two objects.
Okay, so then what are they pointing to? You said they're pointing to the same object. I'm creating two new objects here, right? So there's nothing in common. Okay.
Sorry, I was wrong. Sorry.
So let's try to revisit our understanding. Okay. Let's try to recollect our understanding here. What I told you is whenever you're creating objects, the one to the left of the equal to is nothing but a pointer. A pointer. Here I'm saying my child obj is a pointer of type child. Right? This is like a keychain. Right? This is a keychain, this is a key. So I'm saying that this particular pointer is of type child. And when I create a new child, that's where this pointer will point to the object. Right? So we all understand this concept. Now, what is this? What did we do here? Okay, so let's apply the same logic here. So we are creating a new object. So the left side of the equals to is a pointer. So here I'm saying my parent, whose name is dynamic object, this dynamic object is of type parent, right? So far it's not pointing to an object. And then you are saying new child. You're creating an object of child and assigning it to the parent. So how is this possible? Right, so far we thought this is how you create objects. But now if you see, when I compile, when I run, I'm able to run this program. There are no compilation errors here. So just for the sake of example, see here, I'll just say new other, I'll create a class called Superman. Superman, which extends parent. Okay. Now let's say, now here I'm changing that. I'm changing this object to point to a new pointer. Sorry, I'm changing this reference to point to a new object. So what is happening here? My program is still compiling. When I run, it is still invoking methods. But take a look here. This particular line printed 2. So it invoked a method in the subclass. But here, when you invoke the print parent details, it invoked the method in the superclass. So does it feel like, a particular object is taking different forms here? It's taking, it's calling different methods dynamically. That is important thing. Right? So this is known as polymorphism, wherein you have a kind of a reference. You're saying that my parent is, this particular reference is of type parent. But the kind of object, the object is decided runtime. So when you create the object, here you're saying that even though he's saying parent, my child inherits a parent. Right? So I'm creating a child object here. This guy, this parent guy, is actually pointing to a child object. Right? Remember, a child inherits from a parent. Right? So that's why this is possible. Now if I go and let's say assume that, this is not, let's assume a child does not exist a parent. Okay? And so that means I have to remove this. Now if you see, I'll get a compilation error here. It says cannot convert a child to a parent. Okay? The reason an object is able to take different forms, right, is because of inheritance. The moment I extend a child, I extend the child from parent, my program compiles. Right? Here I'm dynamically pointing an object. I'm saying my object, my reference is of type parent, but it is actually pointing to the child object because the child is nothing but the parent. Right? So when Java runs, what it does, it sees this particular line. So it creates a child object with reference as parent. Now here when you try to access the parent attribute, it will check where this particular parent attribute is defined. Is it defined in the child or is it defined in the parent? So it goes ahead, first checks in the child. It checks in the child if the parent attribute exists. If it does not exist, it goes to the parent. Then it assigns the data in the parent. Likewise, when you call the method, it calls the method within the subclass first. If that method exists, it calls, otherwise it goes to the superclass. Right? The only difference that we have seen is is a particular object. Earlier we were saying a parent is a child. Now I'm able to point the same parent object to a new kind of an object. I'm saying here is a new Superman. My child is a new Superman. And then it tries to execute the same logic. So it tries to access this parent attribute in the subclass. It goes checks here. So the attribute does not exist. Then it goes to the superclass. It checks that the attribute exists in the superclass. Likewise with the method. Okay, so is that clear? What is polymorphism? How a reference is dynamically pointing to an object. It's not decided upfront. When you actually run, that's where the program decides what kind of an object it is and calls the methods in the respective object. Okay, is that clear? I'll take a minute break here to answer any questions. Okay, so good, you all understand. Now I have a question. So my child has a child attribute, right? So can I say dynamic object, oops, copy paste this guy, dot, go to the child and say child attribute. Child attribute is equal to Tom. Can I do that? Think about it. Okay, so I want everyone to try, even though it is wrong, don't worry. Just, make sure you answer. I'm here to correct your understanding, okay? So good, yeah. Most of you have given the right answer. The answer is no. So if you can see here, I'm getting a compilation error. I'm getting error. The reason now, why is it not working? Right? In my child class, I have the attribute here. So that means it should work, right? If I say the same thing, child obj dot child attribute, I'm able to access that. Now, why is this not working here? The reason it does not work here is, here we said the object type is of type parent. So this reference only knows about the methods or attributes that are defined in the parent. It is not aware of anything that is additionally declared in the child. Right? All it knows is that my parent does not contain this attribute. If you look at the parent, it contains only parent attribute and print parent details. It does not contain anything else. Right? So if you try to access something that is defined only in the subclass, then you will get a compilation error. Okay? But if you access something that is overridden, right? If you access something that is overridden in the child class, then the overridden method is called. So if you see, when I run this program, it is printing number 2 here. The number 2 is printed from the subclass. So what happens is, when you run this program, the print, basically when you compile this, the compiler checks that the print parent details is present in this reference type or not. Right? So that's the compile time. Once the compile time is done, once your dot class is created, and when you run the program, when this line comes, that's when Java will check dynamically. It says even though this reference is of type parent, but the object is of type child. So this parent is taking a different form here. Even though it's saying it is parent, it is taking the form of a child. So it goes and executes the method in the child. Okay, it goes and checks if the child contains that method. If it contains, it executes that. Otherwise, it goes to the parent. Okay, is that clear, everyone? What is polymorphism and how it works? Okay, so a question is, can you tell me a real world example of polymorphism? Okay, who wants to try? Who wants to try in what scenarios you will implement polymorphism? Anyone? Okay, so yesterday we discussed about some examples, right? So I'll say car, or I'll say, Toyota car. Let's say Rakesh car is equal to, now I go to the showroom and say I need Toyota LE version, right? Now when I say Rakesh car dot drive, it checks whether the drive method is here or here. Okay, now let me just show you something. Now what if I go and buy a hybrid car, hybrid Toyota, right? Now when I say Rakesh.drive, it checks what kind of a car it is and then dynamically invokes the drive method on this class or on the parent class. Okay, and you can apply this in any real world example. Okay, like for example, so we discuss iPhone is equal to new. This is where you decide runtime. What kind of an iPhone it is? It is iPhone 6 or iPhone 6 Plus, right? So these are all real world examples wherein you decide on the fly what kind of an object it is. Okay, is that clear, Vamshi? Any other questions, anyone, on polymorphism or inheritance? Okay, let's do one thing. The next topic is interfaces, and we have like 15 minutes left. I would not be able to cover interfaces in this 15 minutes. Let's actually break for today, and I want you guys to, right, implement an example exercise. Let's say, design a employee class with subclasses as let's say software developer, or let's say manager. Okay. Eventually, end of the day, every software developer is an employee. Every manager is an employee. Right. So every software developer is an employee. Likewise, every manager is an employee. So by that, what do I mean by that? What do you understand by this particular statement? When I say every software developer is an employee, what do you understand by that statement?
Software developer extends employee and manager extends employee.
Correct. So that means a software developer inherits from employee. Likewise, a manager inherits from an employee. So I want you guys to write a program which simulates this particular behavior. Okay, and then provide a method to print the roles and responsibilities of an employee. Okay, so there should be a method which prints the roles and responsibilities of an employee. Okay, so take this as exercise and make sure you implement that. Share today's notes. Okay, let's stop for today. Any questions before we we resume for today and continue? So in case if you have some time and if you understand all the topics that we discussed so far, go ahead and start reading about inheritance. That's the next topic we'll be covering, inheritance and abstract classes. Okay. Any questions? Well, okay. Then in that case, thank you everyone. Let's continue tomorrow. Okay. And guys, please inform your friends. If there's anyone, inform your friends to join the class regularly. Okay. Thank you everyone. Let's continue tomorrow.